So now we're going to transition to the third phase of this event, which is going to be a fireside chat. And to our attendees, maybe you can like promote it to some other guys in the Tezos community or friends to join in. And also, you can still ask questions in the chat if you like. We've collected a bunch of questions already. So yeah, let's jump into that. Let me see here. First question, maybe I'll just start with the first question that I had, and that is connected to another question that Alex posted is, you were mentioning that 007 in general is estimated for summer 2020, and Marco, you just said that it's that you hope to propose this on next month already, right? So what I'd like to know is what the process is going to look like. I suppose there's going to be a test net, and yeah, Alex's question has been, will there be a test or feedback cycle before mainnet injection, for instance, through a public testnet? And yeah, perhaps you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure, I can. Marco, do you want to go?
No, go
on. So I'm saying summer 2020 in order to be as conservative as possible. It's much better to under-promise and over-deliver. So summer 2020 may also mean, April, May, right? I consider the summer. So it's something that's conflicting. I think on the testing side, we will have testnets up and running for 007, maybe for independent features, maybe all together. We're currently sort of reviewing. So the two large feature sets, right? Baking accounts, stateful baking accounts, and sapling. We're currently in the review process for them. So if they are reviewed in the next couple of weeks, then we can possibly release testnets either for both features at the same time or separately. We'll see. But yes, there will be public testnets and people can give feedback after public testnets.
Yeah, I guess my major question about this was, will there be enough time for us to find maybe inconsistencies in the RPC, something that is maybe easy to change before mainnet injection, so we can give a feedback from a tooling perspective?
Yeah. So I would say absolutely. So I think, like Adrian was saying, the two major components of this, the big moving parts that required a lot of design. That's also the big difference between the kind of features that we're talking about. There are some features that are obvious bugs and are easy to. It's just a matter of finding the time and the person to fix them. If you want, it's just man hours. And then there is a problem of designing new features, and there it's complicated because you have one design and then it's broken, and then you need to start from scratch. So I would say that the two biggest question marks that were sapling and baking accounts, the design has been nailed down more or less, and there is an implementation that is coherent and kind of works. Now the review is not gonna completely change that. So the review is more like, we should drop this, we should slightly fix this, there is a bug, stuff like that. It's not going to be, let's redesign the whole thing from scratch. So I would say that the big, so these are the kind of things that could really delay a protocol by 6 months. And what you're rightfully worried about, the small bugs and inconsistency, definitely there will, I mean, as soon as these two features are merged, I think we'll launch a testnet. Even if they're buggy, it's fine. I mean, that's the point of a testnet, so that we have the time to get all the feedback and fix the little issues here and there.
All right, let me go through. Maybe I'll just go through this list here. We also had this upvote feature, so some of those are upvoted. Yeah, I guess another interesting question is how can we incorporate community feedback into selecting which feature mix is proposed as protocol upgrade? Yeah, you have so many things in the pipeline, right? So there should be some mechanism to see what the community is particularly looking forward to in implementing next. So perhaps you could shed some light on that.
Yeah. First, so I just have a quick thing. I think Agora is getting, so I mean, I started working on protocols when there was nothing, and I think it's very nice to have Agora. It provides, I don't know, a place a sane place, better, I mean, a bit saner than Reddit, where you can discuss and sort of build a little bit of understanding of what people want and etc. So I'm very happy. I hope people will converge there more. And one thing that so I can give you an example of another mechanism that we'd like to implement that didn't work because of the lack of a baking account. So this is a big motivation for me for having baking accounts. Just a tiny example of why they're useful. We wanted to do a simple poll contract. So just asking people, we would like to implement this, more or less this feature, and write it quickly just in a piece of text, and say, would you like to have this? And just polling and asking people, so that people could vote and say, yeah, I like this, I like that. And so the point is that we needed bakers to participate in this vote. But the thing is, bakers don't want to use their main keys, that is the only one key that protects everything that you have, to vote for a random smart contract written by random developers. It's not very, I mean, it's a bit risky. It's not exactly encouraging. So basically, the code is ready. The web interface is so everything is ready. And this application was developed, but we haven't launched it yet because we're afraid nobody will use it. So once we have baking accounts and somebody can just add a key saying, this is my I don't know, public appearance key. This is the key that I use to identify on Twitter or on whatever website, etc. They will be able to just vote for example, in a poll contract, and this would be a big signaling mechanism for us to say, do you want sampling or not? Do you want this feature of baking accounts or not, etc. But we're not there yet, so we're improving.
Yeah, from my side on this, I like Agora and Reddit and sort of forums and chats. The problem is they're really not Sybil resistant at all. So you have no idea whether what people say actually reflects community sentiment or doesn't, because you're sort of trying to map random identities on the internet that aren't Sybil resistant back to actually roles on the network. This is actually something that we also have implemented. It's a roles opcode that gives you sort of an idea of how many roles bakers could be voting with, so that we could potentially extend the polling contract by actually having a notion of how many roles that baker actually controls in real life, which is something I like as well. Yeah, but for now, I think, especially in terms of if you have features that you'd like to see implemented, I think Agora is a fantastic place to put new features. I'm not sure whether Agora is yet the best place to determine what governance should vote on, due to the Sybil resistance problem.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think at this point, Agora is a great place to discuss. Basically, like it's very sane compared to other places. That's for sure. Yeah.
But anyway,
okay, so,
meetups, for example, are a great place to also to do this. So go to events, either physically or virtually.
Right.
So I don't know, for me, the T quorums were very, very useful to get out of my little bubble and to meet more people and more users and to actually get to understand what they want. And meetups are great. So go to meetups, raise questions and suggestions.
Yeah, come to Tezos Berlin meetups. We're gonna do those like virtually this year, probably solely. So anyone can participate. Okay, Adrian, we great. Okay, Adrian, we've got a direct question here for you, I guess, is please explain again in which scenario rotating consensus keys makes sense.
Right.
Maybe.
So I have two basic examples here. One is you initially sort of set up in cycle 7 and thought, I'm going to do this for me and my 3 friends. And later on you decide, let's do this as a larger scale operation and let's run a public baker. Maybe in the beginning you only did it with a software key, but now as more and more people delegate to the software-based key, you're stuck with it, right? You can't change it. You can't tell your 1,000 delegators to switch to the new key. I mean, Tezos community tried this. Tezos Capital tried this. I think they still have the majority of the delegation on the old original key. So really, the idea is that you over time want to, maybe your baker became larger than you expected, and you want to make sure that the security assumptions around your key generations are appropriate for the level of funds you have now responsible on the key. And the second example is, let's say you actually want to upgrade to new cryptography, such as BLS signatures. Currently, we have no way of doing this, but we want to allow existing bakers to migrate to newer cryptography as it becomes available. Same thing goes for quantum secure cryptography. We will need this key rotation concept over and over again, unless people are willing to effectively shoot the bakers, like to kill bakers and restart bakers all the time when they want to change keys.
Yeah, which I guess people don't like. I myself wouldn't like that. So,
yeah.
Yep.
So I think if you want to have any realistic way of getting bakers to adopt new cryptography that makes the protocol more efficient, we will need this key rotation feature, because otherwise they will never adopt it.
All right. Speaking of bakers, we've got another related question here, which is, I assume 007 will not include a lowering of the row size. Is this something in the pipeline for 008 or 009? And if so, what would be a good row size from your perspective? And I guess I could add to that, I've heard that there were tests of like a 5K row size, right, which was successful. And I would be very interested in learning more about which would technically be a row size, like a low row size that is still technically possible.
So I think it's going to... Go on.
Just sort of outside of the conversation on whether we want to go to 5K or 6K or 1K, we could be going to 10K, to 10 XZ per volt right now. This is purely a trade-off between storage space required and computational power required on the nodes, right? It's a trade-off on sort of how powerful of a machine do you need in order to run a Tezos node. So it's about finding the right, so there is no right answer for we should go to this roll size. There's a right trade-off, right balance we need to find where we don't force everyone to run on massive machines, but we still don't exclude people for requiring massive roll sizes.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm not sure if there is a big, so if right now having the 8K, it's a big blocking. It's blocking a lot of people, and it's a big issue. We could lower it. I don't think so. I don't know. It's really hard to tell. From my point of view, I don't think it's prohibitively expensive for somebody that wants to set up a sort of a serious little bakery to do that. But again, I come from Europe. We are relatively rich here, so maybe somebody that is living in South America, I would say, no, it's completely prohibitive. So I don't know. I'm hoping to suggestions. If there are a big push from the community to lower the roll size, then we can vote for it and we'll decide if it's worth paying the performance price, let's say.
Yeah. Important to note, you can be a baker with 1 XCZ. Well, I guess 512 XCZ. So you don't need 8K XCZ in your account in order to register as a baker. You can register with 1K and someone else can delegate 7,999 XCZ to you, and that gets you to the full roll. You just need enough XCZ in order to cover the security deposits for the baking rights you allocated. But there's no blanket that you need more than 8K in order to start being a baker. This is not well communicated, and I didn't realize when we said our baker. But yeah, you don't actually need 8K.
Yeah. All right, we've got another question here, which is, do core developers consider to implement a feature that allows bakers to block new delegations? And if so, approximately when can such a feature be expected?
Yes, delegation on-off switches. This is implemented. It will most likely also be proposed in 007.
Great. All right, let's see what else we've got here. Alex, did you have another question posted here? I think there were a few.
I had some more, but Anders also had one. I'm just reading it. Has anyone done anything on sidechains or other solutions which could make a token become a suitable means of payment for day-to-day transactions? So thinking seconds to settle and thousands of transactions per second. Is this something you feel you see Tezos being supported sometime?
By the way, wait, we don't end webinar. Okay. Sidechains, yes. Right. I think sidechains are So layer 2 generally only appeared in Ethereum and Bitcoin because they were fundamentally aware that they couldn't adapt the core protocol. And due to that, they had to come up with a magic solution that allowed them to pretend like they can scale. Practically speaking, there are no working layer 2 solutions in either Bitcoin or Ethereum, and they're tremendously complex to solve from sort of a cryptoeconomic perspective. ZK rollups may help, but generally speaking, I'm very skeptical on layer 2 because Ethereum has spent hundreds of millions of dollars on trying to make this work, and they still haven't managed to make it work. I think if Ethereum at the time had a way to upgrade the core protocol at a reasonable speed, we would have never seen layer 2. We would have just seen constant evolution into a better layer 1. I think this is somewhat likely to happen in Tezos. Maybe ZK rollups work, and this is why we're adding the cryptographic primitives. But yeah, I'm much more bullish on improving layer 1 and hoping that a magical layer 2 solution will work.
Yeah, so this is a bit far from my day-to-day work in the sense that we focus on the core. So this is not something that we look at closely. I would like to have people in the ecosystem thinking about this, and I know that there are other companies and other actors that are curious about this. But like Adrian is saying, we're very far from having the throughput being a bottleneck. And we're very far from, so actually some of the features that we hope to see in 2020, it's more throughput. So we have a lot of very low hanging fruits that we can use to, if tomorrow we have a gazillion transactions, there are things that we can do in a relatively short time to make that much better. So it's kind of a known problem right now. It can rapidly become a problem. And if you haven't done your own work, then it's going to be a pain. So I hope, I would like to see funding and attention to the problem. I don't think we should freak out or start like Adrian is saying, there are a lot of solutions that don't look exactly right. So I wouldn't endorse a solution just to do something quick and dirty because we don't have a problem, but I would like to keep looking for the right solution.
I think practically speaking, at the base layer, we can easily get to 1,000 transactions a second. So like block times of 5 seconds are absolutely feasible. Finality within 5 to 10 seconds is also completely feasible at the base layer. So I think we need to get to serious transaction volume before we need to fall back to layer 2. Like we can get to 1,000 transactions a second on layer 1, I think.
I had a question. I'm just following the flow of questions from top to bottom.
Yep.
A question to Marco about the sapling integration. I know there will be viewing keys be available, say, for example, for auditors. How do you think the workflow should look like? What does an auditor or a software that supports the work of an auditor need to do? Do we need to kind of crawl the entire blockchain or the entire past state of the UTXO set to identify kind of historic balances and in and out flows? Or how is this supposed to work?
Yeah, so basically from the outside, you will see a contract with a big blob of encrypted data. So you cannot do anything about that. If you have a viewing key, if you're part of that shielded pool, then you can use your viewing key to find your own, like you said, it's a UTXO model. So you will be able to find your tokens, basically. They're basically your encrypted coins, if you want. They're called commitments. So you will be able to find your commitments. And basically, like in any UTXO model, you will need to scan the whole state to try to rebuild, to find, and you will actually try every single one of them. You will try to decrypt them, and you will see that number 5, number 11, number 200, they're yours. And after you've done that, you need to check which one of them you already spent, and you will remove them. So those are your spent outputs, and you will end up with what's called the living set of unspent outputs. This is really exactly the same thing as an UTXO model. Once you have that, you know your balance, and you can build new transaction by picking some of the unspent outputs and putting them in a transaction to burn them and to create new tokens. So this is exactly what the Tezos client does right now. So whenever you say you create an account, you create new keys. So you will create a new spending key, a new viewing key, new addresses if you need to get paid. And then you start transacting with a contract. And the Tezos client is going to download the full state of the contract, which can be potentially large. And he's going to scan it, and he's going to keep it in cache. So this is something that the Tezos client doesn't do up to now. It has basically zero state, except for holding your keys. Right now, it will have a directory where it keeps all the state that is scanned already with your set of outputs. So that's why I was saying that integration in the wallets it's an important point, because it's kind of tricky. There is a lot more work that has to be done. So we want to try to make this work as easy as possible.
Thanks.
Okay, let's go through the list. The next one is, Adrian, is programmable staking still in the pipeline, or has it been abolished due to this feature being contentious? Is another question being asked.
So in the end, what I fundamentally care about is to make bakers more secure by giving them the ability of multi-sigs. I still think that programmable staking and sort of giving bakers more degrees of flexibility is a good idea. But again, I wanted to focus on getting consensus key rotation in there and getting like the general structure set up. So for now, there's no programmability. If someone wants to build this into the future, or the community wants this in the future, we can't block this from happening. I would still support it, but for now, let's focus on the least contentious part.
Yeah, gotcha.
All right. People are asking for the name of the next protocol. Has there been a decision already? Or
I'd like to go with Bond. I think it's such a good opportunity.
Yeah, so I remember you did.
What's a popular German city starting with a D?
Oh, there are a bunch. Düsseldorf. Yeah.
Right.
But I saw you did at Cryptium Labs, you did a Twitter vote, right? And the result was Damascus, I believe. But yeah, we could do a poll here as well. We've got the poll function.
Delphi is going to be easier to crack if you want to do a vanity hash.
What are the most popular choices at this point? Is it it's Delphi, right?
Yeah, Delphi would be cool too. I don't know. We'll see. It's luckily the last thing we have to decide upon.
Yes, indeed. Okay, let me see. Oh yeah, I think Awa just posted it was her personal poll. Okay, all right. Got the link there in the chat. I just remember that Damascus won the vote. But then again, like you said, Adrian, you can't really know who's voting with 50 counts or so, right?
Yeah. It's a hard problem to solve. Simple resistance is really difficult to solve.
Okay, so we've had a bunch of questions on layer 2, layer 1, TPS. I think we've got that covered already.
Yep.
Let's see, what else do we have here? Another question on baking is, can a baker split voting power to 2 different proposals at the same round?
That'd be the idea. That you really want, because bakers are in this sort of weird position, right? Where some bakers exist and people sort of delegate their voting power to them as well and don't care. They assume the baker makes reasonable choices on their behalf, sort of parliamentary democracy kind of style. Other bakers are more set up that they want to ask their people what they should vote like. For example, a lot of the major exchanges can't vote because they don't want to be seen as holding governance power on behalf of their customers. And so for them, this is really to give people to give bakers the ability to represent their delegation set, right? Like if you're Coinbase and you can poll all your customers and then your customers vote yay on A, 50% votes yay on A and 50% votes yay on B to represent this in your vote. So the idea being that you can split your vote across all available proposals, for example. And also across, right, we have different phases, right? You have the proposal phase where you can upload multiple proposals, so there you should be able to split. And we have the, let's say, exploration phase where you have to say yay or nay. And they should also be able to split between yay and nay, and also abstain. By the way, this also doesn't fundamentally change any of the model because this is currently still possible. It just are operationally incredibly complex because technically you could just be running a one-roll baker. Like Coinbase could just right now be running a one-roll, like thousands of one-roll bakers, and sort of map all the unique customers to one roll baker and vote that way. It's just really hard operationally, and there's no reason why we need to force all this complexity into the operations if we can make this simple in the protocol.
Another question, how often will wallets and exchanges be contacted in the proposed 5th cooling period to push them to make necessary changes? And by whom? Who should do that?
The community. Like if you're using Coinbase and Coinbase doesn't move, you should probably start yelling at them, or move away from them. Same for your baker. Like if the people that you delegate your tokens to or that you give custody of your funds to, kick them in the ass if they don't move. But yeah, there's like the protocol doesn't try to contact people. So the 5th voting period is just so that people have certainty that something will get activated before it gets actually activated.
Yeah. We have another question.
We try to make the information as easy as possible to find. So there's a change log. But we're not gonna tap on people's shoulders to pay attention to us. I mean, if you're running something related to Tezos, you know that it's gonna amend. You know that stuff will break. We'll try to be gentle with that, but it's part of the bet.
Yeah, the white paper specifically talked about self-amending features. So everyone that's currently using Tezos should be very well aware that this does not guarantee long-term stability at this moment in time.
There's a question that's kind of, yep, Alex, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you do.
Yeah, that's a question kind of related to that, which is somebody asked, if we don't want to lag behind, why limit to just one annual release? And is that a limitation due to few engineers working on the core protocol?
Well, so I actually think the engineering capacity is probably not the bottleneck anymore. Yeah. The problem is taking an ecosystem of, let's say, 10,000 people with you, right? Like we can, like on the engineering side, we can build something that we can build the next charting implementation if we wanted to, for example. But it would take us months to communicate how this works, why this is useful, why this is secure. And so all of this takes a lot of time. And then at the same time, we need to have wallets and exchanges upgrade as well. And I think it's infeasible to push something every 3 months that breaks their stuff. Like no large company is willing to deal with this. So I think the biannual release cycle may just be sort of the equilibrium between speed and stability. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, since the first meetup I've been doing long ago, there's still this is still my same answer. I think the problem is the bottleneck are the community, how much people can understand and follow the changes. And the last thing that you want is for people to feel that this is a toy for developers to have fun and to develop crazy stuff and break things every day. So if it is a system that is supposed to, I mean, like Adrian said, there are prototypes where we're building new technology, okay, but we still want people to use it to the extent that they can. So I mean, you cannot, they cannot feel that this is a toy in the hand of somebody else that is going to iterate like crazy to have fun. They need to come with the project and to follow the project and to be confident that their tokens are safe and everything is done correctly. And they need to understand, really, especially.
Yeah. If you want to see a system where this doesn't apply, where the developers just have a toy, look at Kusama. So Kusama is currently a network that's publicly traded. And sometimes they just push upgrades that delete everyone's tokens. It's great fun and an absolute nightmare to deal with. And we should look at those people and look at Kusama and see what not to do.
Wow. Will Zeppelin transactions be standard transaction type after 0.7, or are they optional?
So so basically they're just operations that you can send to a smart contract. So outside of a smart contract, they cannot be used in Tezos. There is the possibility in the future, if we see that there is a lot of adoption and the technology is working well, to make them first-class transaction. So you might have together with your, so the sapling addresses, they will be at the same level as TZ1, 2, and 3. And you will be able to use them for a bunch of things. And you can send transaction that the protocol will apply, will operate, as opposed to being hidden in one smart contract or several smart contracts.
So this also to some extent applies to the multi-asset shielded pool. So I expect that in sapling and the multi-asset shielded pool, we'll have them as smart contract transactions, not its first class. But maybe then, let's say 0010. So if we may see that people actually starting to use them, and then we can move them to the base layer protocol. That would also nicely get around a bunch of these privacy issues related to gas payments, because then you could also just have a shielded gas payment in protocol.
Yes, so if we move the transaction to first-class transactions, we solve the problem of the gas, because then you can pay for gas with shielded tokens.
Yeah. And maybe a last question from kind of an indexer engineering perspective. The current implementation of a full archive node allows you to access historic state at every block for every smart contract. I assume that something similar for this shielded pool is not so easy to do, but could you imagine to maybe help wallet developers to not having implement the cryptographic decoding of the shielded UTXO sets? Could you imagine that something like this would move into the node and be available through the RPC in a similar way that we look at historic state right now?
So the thing is that it depends on who's holding the viewing keys. So if we're talking about generic data, then it's just encrypted and it's completely useless for an indexer to show that. If I have here we're bridging a little bit between the indexers and wallets. So like I said, if I have my personal key, viewing key, or if I'm an exchange, an exchange or a big service that has a lot of users and I have many viewing keys, I might want to be. So these are two different cases. So for my personal case, Tezos client that does a little bit of indexing for looking for scanning in the state is enough. If I have a bigger infrastructure, then I might need to have an indexer that is able to do that. So yeah, there might definitely be cases where we need to, but again, I don't think it's the node that has to do this. It's more like an external software that should be tuned for a different kind of workload than the Tezos client.
Good, thanks. Thanks so much. I think we are through all the questions.
Yeah.
Were good questions.
Maybe on the RPC side, if you have RPCs that you would like to have, please create issues about them. For example, like retrieving an operation from its operation hash is one such RPC. And I think this is something that we should be able to get into the node in the next releases. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if there are things that make your life easier, please let us know by creating issues.
All right, I think we're all through all the questions. So let's wrap up here. Thank you very much for presenting and also for answering the questions. It was great and insightful. And yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. Let's do more virtual events. I like this.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you for having us.
Thanks, guys.
For sure.
Have a good
See you
day.
around.
Bye.